In this section, we are going to set up a 3-level approval process for the visa application. To manage this, we will need 3 distinct roles, with each being responsible for a specific level of approval. Let us begin by creating the roles. Open the Roles window. I have already created a few roles in the system: Initial Verifier, Reviewer, and Final Approver. If you would like to create a new role, click on New Record. Assign a name, for example, Initial Verifier. Set the user level to Client or Organization. Choose Manual, and then save the record. You can repeat this process to create as many roles as needed for your approval flow. Now, let us move on to building the workflow in the Workflow Composer. Our goal is to set up a 3-level approval process for the visa application. First, choose Document Process as the workflow type, and set the table to VA201 application data. The system will automatically generate a search key and a name, which you can modify if desired. Set the data access level to Client or Organization, and then save the record. Once saved, you will be directed to the Action page, where we will build the logic and actions for the workflow. Let's start by setting the application status. Before the approval process begins, we want the status to reflect that the application is under review. After each approval or rejection, the status will be updated accordingly. To do this, drag a set variable action into the canvas. Assign it a label like Under Review, and select the status column, VA201 status. Set its value to Under Review and save. Repeat this step to create 2 more set variable actions, one for approved and one for rejected. These will be used later to reflect the outcome of the process. Next, we will create the approval nodes. To begin, drag in a user choice action. This node allows the user or role to approve or reject an item. For the first level approval, assign the Initial Verifier role. You will also need to create a Workflow in-charge entry. Click the zoom icon, then click New Record, and enter a name like Initial Verifier. Set the responsible type to Role and choose the Initial Verifier role from the list. Save this record. You can repeat the same process to set up workflow in-charges for the Reviewer and Final Approver roles, giving each a corresponding name and assigning the proper role. Now back in the User Choice node, select the workflow in-charge for the Initial Verifier, and check the box labeled VA201 is approved. We will differentiate the outcome based on the action taken by the approver, either approve or reject. We also want to include a text template in the approval message. This helps approvers understand where the request is coming from. Click the zoom icon next to the text template field and create a new template named Application. For each field, provide a label, which is what the approver will see, and a DB column name using the @column name format. This setup will dynamically fetch and display relevant data from the application during runtime. Also, enable the zoom window so the approver can click through to see full application details in the UI. Once this is done, you can save and repeat the same process to create the second-level approval node for the reviewer and the third-level node for the final approver, using the same steps. Now let us define the sequence of actions. After the Start node, the application will go to Under Review status. Then we will trigger the Initial Verifier approval node. If the record is approved, it should move on to the reviewer. If it is rejected, it should go directly to Rejected status. To manage this flow, we will use conditions. Click the condition icon and set up logic based on the approval result. For example, if the status equals 2, which indicates approval, it will move to the next node. If the record is rejected, the system will set the status as rejected and end the flow. To ensure the checkbox that handles approval is not mistakenly reused, insert a set variable to mark the checkbox as false after each approval stage. This allows the same checkbox to be used at each level without interference. Repeat these steps for the second and third levels. If the reviewer approves, the record will move to the final approver. If the reviewer rejects, the status will be set to rejected. Once the final approver approves, the status will be set to approved. Again, use conditions to determine the flow direction based on approval or rejection at each level. Now that we have a full 3-level approval path, let us integrate an API call at the end. After the final approval, we want to trigger an API that generates data in the visa table. To do this, drag an HTTP request node onto the canvas. This node will call the API endpoint. Set the method to get. Label the node as application, and link it to the appropriate data column from the application. Place this node immediately after the final approval node and approved status step. To summarize the complete process, the application is submitted and its status is set to under review. In the first level of approval, if approved, it moves to the second level. If rejected, the status is set to rejected. In the second level of approval, if approved, the record moves to the final level. If rejected, the status is set to rejected. In the final level of approval, if approved, the status is set to approved, and an API is called to generate visa data. If rejected, the status is set to rejected. The API node executes and generates a new entry in the visa table. This entire workflow ensures a structured and automated visa approval process with clear roles, stages, and system-driven actions from submission to final data generation.